Now, try to finally start using prototypes. We're gonna continue with the example. Now we're gonna talk about prototypes. Prototype inheritance and delegation area already, but how does all of that actually work? Where it can be summarized like this. So first, each and every function in JavaScript automatically has a property called prototype, and that includes constructor functions. Now that every object that's created by a certain constructor function will get access to all the methods and properties that we define on the constructor prototype property. So just visualize, in our case, this will be person.prototype. So prototype property of the constructor function. So again, as I was just saying, all the objects that are created through this constructor function here will inherit. So they will get access to all the methods and property that are defined on this prototype property. And so let's now actually add a method to this prototype property. And so this is actually object. And so we can now say dot call age. And then we can simply set it to the same function from here. That's it. And then let's take a look at this prototype property. So here is the prototype property, and so you can see that right now we already have a call age method and there. So it was a kind of an empty object. So these two here. So basically it was an empty before, but now there is a call age method already there. So this one that we just defined down here. So once again, remember how I said that each object created by this constructor function, now we get access to all the methods of this prototype property and also to call age. And we should be able to do this. So John, which was this object here, which was created by this constructor function, dot call age. And indeed, we get to the correct age here, so it works. So we can now use this method here on the John object, even though it's not really on itself. So if we check our John here, then you see that it contains the first name and birth year, but it does not contain the call age method, but still we have access to it because of prototype inheritance. And of course, the same is gonna work for Matilda and Jack. So that's effectively solved this problem that we had before when we added the call age method directly to each of the objects. So here we will have created a copy of this method here, attached it to every single object. And so that's why we don't do this. Instead, what we do is this, because now there exists only one copy of this function. So only one of them exists, but then all of the objects that are created using this constructor function can basically reuse this function on themselves. And so that this keyword and each of them is as always set to the object that is calling the method. And so here that's gonna be John, Matilda, Jack, just like we learned previously, that this keyword is set to the object that's calling the method. So in a nutshell, this is how we implement very basic prototype inheritance and JavaScript and practice. So we just observe that John, Matilda, Jack objects are kind of connected to the person. That's why they can have access to this method, or in this case, to just this method that is located inside the prototype property of person. But how and why this actually works? Well, it works because any object always has access to the methods and property from its prototype. And the prototype of John, Matilda, and Jack is person.prototype, and we can actually confirm that because each object has a special property called underscore proto like this. This looks a bit weird, but this is just kind of how it works. Let's take a look. And so this is the prototype of John. It's not prototype property, but it is simply the prototype. So here we see the call age function. That's why John is able to use this. So to the prototype of John object is essentially prototype property or constructor function. And so let's quickly check like this. John underscore proto underscore and person.prototype, save it. So it should be true, indeed it is. So this person.prototype is not prototype of the person. This is a prototype property here, but instead it is what's gonna be used prototype of all the objects that are created with the person constructor function. That we need to keep in mind. In fact, what I just said that is confirmed by this comparison that we just did here. So we just saw that John's prototype, which is this, is the prototype property of person constructor function, and there are actually other built-in methods that we can use to prove this. So on any object, for example, object.prototype, we can test if this is a prototype of another object. So we can call is prototype of and then John, and this should also become true. And indeed it is. So this confirms one more time that person.prototype is indeed the prototype of John, and the same for Matilda and Jack. And so person.prototype is not prototype of the person. Indeed, it is false. So now anyway, where does this proto property here on the job object actually comes from? Remember the new operator that we talked about before, it contains this number 3 which links the empty new object to the prototype, and so basically it is step number 3 which will create this proto property, and it set its value to the prototype property of the function that is being called. So that's exactly what is written here. So again, it set the proto property on the object to the prototype property of the constructor function, and this is how JavaScript knows internally that your object is connected to the %.prototype. I just wanted to quickly show you that we can also set properties on the prototype, and so not just methods. So let's say %.prototype.species that all of the objects here will have in common, and so that Homo sapiens. And so if we now take a look at John, Matilda and Jack, then we should see these properties. So these species are actually not directly here, but indeed they will be here in this prototype. And so we were able to do like this: John.species, Matilda.species, Jet.species. These objects will then inherit to this property from the prototype. So you see, we indeed get the Homo sapien, all of them. Now, however, when we take a look at this object, this property is not really directly in the object, so it's not its own property. So all properties are only the ones that are declared directly on the object itself, so not including the inherited properties. And actually in JavaScript, there's a way of checking for that. So if we check like this, John Doe has O property first name, and John Doe has O property species. So first name and a species. So you see, indeed, this object has its own property with this first name, not this one. Species does not have its own property. And again, that's because this property is not really inside of John object. It simply has access to it because of its prototype. So because it's in the prototype property of person right here. So sometimes this method here can be quite helpful in certain situations.